Hey, what's good, my fellow masters? With our 6th anniversary means the wait is nearly over for those who have been eagerly anticipating the new SSR assassin, Koyanskaya of Light. She's kinda a big deal in my opinion, effectively heralding a new era for the Buster meta as a premier support unit, or more specifically, making 3-turn farming with certain Buster servants more viable. I have spoken about it many times before about how such and such a servant is compatible with the system known as Double Koyanskaya. So much so that it's kind of reminiscent of how I sounded in the lead up to Castoria's release last year. But what else is there to Koyanskaya? And how exactly does she enable 3-turn farming? Well, if you're not that familiar with what she can do, then it's my hope this overview will give you the highlights of why she would be a great addition to your Chaldea. Like my Melocene video, I won't be going every little detail related to Koyanskaya of Light. I'll just be covering the main things like her skills, NP, and why I like her. Naturally, a good place to start are her base stats. The newest 5-star AoE assassin has a base attack at level 90 of 11,616. Not exactly breaking any records here, but it's respectable among her current SSR assassin peers, being the 4th highest. Though do keep in mind that the assassin class base modifier will lower her effective attack down to 10,454. As for Koyanskaya's base HP, it's a decently healthy 13,081, which sits around 5th highest among the SSR assassins, and should give her a bit of leeway to take some hits from enemies, you know, if the battle happens to be taking longer than 3 turns. The CEO of NFF Services has a quick Buster-centric deck with 2 of each of those cards and a lone arts card. The hit counts on her command cards are pretty nice, having 4 hits on her quick and arts cards, 3 hits on her Buster, and 5 hits for her extra attack. But enough of her stats and deck. Let's get into the fun stuff, Koyanskaya's skills. The first skill she starts off with does 2 really important things with regards to helping Buster servants 3-turn farm. It can charge an ally's MP gauge from 30% at skill level 1 to the all-important 50% at max. And then it also lowers the cooldown of the ally's skills by 2. So if this first skill is used in conjunction with another Koyanskaya from the friend support, one could conceivably lower the turns of a main attacker's skills that are on cooldown by 4, while simultaneously charging their MP gauge up to 100%. Of course, it may not be ideal to do all of that on the same turn, but I hope you get the idea of how effective Koyanskaya's first skill can be, which is probably why it has a pretty lengthy cooldown of its own, 8 turns at skill level 10. There is a demerit effect as well. The party receives 1000 damage when this skill is used, but on the bright side, it will never be the cause of killing the party. Basically, it's a minor inconvenience relative to the benefits of this skill. Koyanskaya's second skill is also targetable and has 4 effects. It will grant the target a buff to their damage against both human trait enemies and man attribute enemies by up to 50% each, with the 2 effects lasting for 3 turns. In addition, there is a 3-turn on-attack activated buff, which allows the target to charge their MP gauge up to 10% whenever using their normal Buster attacks. And to top things off, a star bomb of up to 20 critical stars. All of this on a 6-turn cooldown at max. Now, I really like special damage buffs that come from skills, especially if they last for a few turns. This way, the special damage effect will boost regular attacks as well on turns where firing off the MP is not possible. I should mention that the human trait and the man attribute can be a bit confusing, sounding like they should be one and the same. It's mostly enemies found throughout the game that possess the human trait, with a few NPC servants or characters included. There is some overlap with enemies that have the man attribute, but I'd say you will probably get the most benefit of the man attribute damage buff from fights with the 160 odd servants that have that particular attribute. The third skill is where the Buster goodness really comes into play. It too is a targetable skill and can provide a 3-turn boost to an ally's Buster performance, scaling from 30% to 50%. And if that potent Buster buff wasn't enough, it also grants an increase to said ally's critical strength by up to 50%, specifically for their Buster cards. Then to ensure those Buster cards have the stars needed to crit, the star weight is increased by a massive 5000% at max level. Again, this effect is specific to Buster cards. As for the skill's cooldown, at skill level 10, it's a decent 6 turns. So, setting aside the whole 3-turn farming support aspect, this third skill can be a huge boon to buster units in general, and in particular those that have critical focus skills, triple buster decks, or both. And her second skill complements this so nicely with the ability to provide a good amount of critical stars, essentially giving Koyanskaya the capability to be an incredible critical support unit, able to do the trifecta of supply stars, buff the critical damage, and buff the star absorption of an ally, albeit only for buster cards. Moving on to the passives of this, Bunny, who insists she's not a fox, there are a fair amount at 5 passive skills. A modest 8% increase to the performance of her quick cards, a 12% and 6% boost to her own critical strength coming from 2 separate passives, increases to her instant kill and mental debuff resistance, both at 6% respectively, an enhancement of 10% to her own arts performance, and finally a 20% increase to her NP damage, a passive effect that you don't see too often. As for her appends, there is the usual extra attack boost and mana loading commonly found on all servants. And then Koyanskaya's third append is an attack boost against archer enemies, ranging from 20 to 30% at max. Why archer enemies, I wonder? Unless there's a lore reason for it, which I can't think of off the top of my head. It almost feels sort of random. Regardless, I don't see much in the way this attack buff versus archers really enhancing Koyanskaya's effectiveness, considering that for a lot of the time, she'll be used in a support role. So among the 3 appends, it should be the lowest priority in my opinion. Koyanskaya's MP is an AoE buster type, which means she can either act as a second NP option, or be your primary attacker when appropriate. This goddess of weapons can certainly benefit from her own skills to further enhance her NP during those times you want to use her as your AoE assassin in battle. The MP itself has a built-in attack buff of 20% that activates first, and other than damaging all enemies on the field, it also has a couple of effects that provide some utility to the party. It will reduce all enemies' NP gauge, something that has saved me a bunch of times, and it charges the NP gauge of the party by way of overcharge ranging from 10 to 30%. Assuming all of her skills were used to her own benefit, Koyan's NP damage relative to other AoE assassins in the game is pretty good. Compared to her peers that are currently in the game for NA, Koyanskaya comes in at second from the top, just behind Shuten Doji, although this will change in the future when a couple of new AoE assassins are added. And of course, she does considerably more damage against man attribute and or human trait enemies. All in all, she can perform rather well in the role of an AoE assassin attacker. Now, with all the mention of 3-turn buster farming with 2 Koyanskayas, I figured going over the typical way it works would be a benefit. I made some annotations describing the basic requirements in some past videos, like the 6th anniversary free SSR one, but I'm sure for newer players or those unfamiliar with Koyan, it may yet still be unclear. First, there are some things you'll need, a few requirements to make firing off the buster MP 3 times in a row a success. Starting with the 5-star craft essence Kaleidoscope. It doesn't have to be max limit broken, although it would be ideal if you are fortunate enough to have one. And there are some servants who are exceptions to needing this CE. Next, you will need a buster servant who is capable of charging their own MP gauge up to 50% on a 7-turn cooldown or less, or one that has a 30% NP gauge self-charge, but this would need to be on a 5-turn cooldown or less. An exception does exist for this requirement as well. And if your Kaleidoscope is not max limit broken, then those particular servants will also need their second append skill, Load Magical Energy, or otherwise known as Mana Loading, leveled to max. Basically, the buster servant that will be the main attacker needs to start out with a 100% NP gauge on turn 1. Depending on the servant and whether they have a 50% or 30% NP battery, you will need either the Atlas Academy Mystic Code or the Chaldea Combat Uniform, commonly referred to as the plug suit. Again, there are some exceptions to this, but this is generally the common requirement. And for servants with a 30% NP battery, another support unit from your roster will be needed, one that has the ability to split their NP charge, so either Waver, Rhinus, or Castoria. Oberon will work as well when he's added to the game, but is a little overkill with regards to the total NP charge needed. Obviously, you will need your own Koyanskaya and another from the friend support. Using the recently released SSR Berserker Morgan as our example of a buster servant with a 50% battery and meeting the cooldown requirement, You can see she starts off with a full MP gauge thanks to a K-scope and max mana loading Append. Turn 1, Morgan gets buffed with the third skill from both Koyans, boosting her buster damage by a combined 100%, and then her MP is fired off. Turn 2, Morgan uses her first and second skill to charge her MP gauge by 50%, along with buffing her attack as well. One of the Koyanskayas uses her first skill to charge the other half of Morgan's MP gauge, along with reducing her cooldowns by 2. Morgan fires off her MP to clear the second wave. It's important to note that the order in which the skills are activated is crucial. Morgan's skills pertaining to her MP charges needed to be activated first before using Koyanskaya's first skill on her. Otherwise, the cooldown reduction will be wasted and Morgan will be unable to use her MP charge on the next turn. Turn 3, the support Koyan uses her first skill on Morgan, charging her MP up by 50%, and further reducing Morgan's first and second skill cooldowns by 2. Morgan's second skill is now good to go and can be activated. And then using the Atlas Academy Mystic Code's third skill will refresh Morgan's first skill, thereby bringing Morgan's MP gauge back to full, ready to wipe out the third and final wave of enemies. Whether or not Koyanskaya's second skill gets used will depend on the enemies being fought or if the stars are needed for a critical attack to help clear the wave. I skipped these for convenience in this example. However, if the 50% battery on the DPS Buster unit has a cooldown of 6 turns or less, like Morgan here, then it is possible to get away with just a 50% starting NP charge CE at the beginning of turn 1, as long as the DPS unit's MP battery is used on turn 1. This should make the barrier to entry a bit lower for some masters. Of course, this assumes use of the plug suit Mystic Code and a third 50% charging unit like Castoria shown here. For Buster Servants with a 30% battery on a 5-turn cooldown, the sequence follows the same pattern, but now with an additional support NP charger. Here we're using Arjuna Altar as an example. Turn 1, both Koyan's third skills on Arjuna Altar plus his first skill, and then clear the wave. Turn 2, Arjuna Altar's second skill is used for a 30% charge, then one of the Koyanskaya's first skills. Order change to swap in the other support unit, in this case Waver, and then top up Arjuna's NP gauge and fire it off. Turn 3, the support Koyan uses her first skill on Arjuna Altar, refreshing both his first and second skills, which are then used. Followed up with Waver again topping up the NP gauge for Arjuna Altar to clear the final wave with his NP. As you just saw from the Arjuna Altar example, 3-turn Buster farming doesn't pay any heed to how many enemies there are in a wave. Even if it's just 2 enemies or 1, NP refund is not a factor. So for nodes where arts or quick looping may not be possible due to inadequate enemies in each wave, it shouldn't be an issue for the Buster-focused Koyanskaya system. Of course, there are downsides to the Koyanskaya system. The need for the Kaleidoscope CE is one. This will be an obstacle for many masters. Furthermore, being limited to the K-scope does pose an issue with overall damage output since there are no other effects to enhance the attacker's NP. And it takes up a CE slot in the party which can impact the number of event currency CEs one can use. Related to that, unlocking a mana loading and raising it to max may prove to be an inconvenience for many, especially if they're short on materials. The specific Atlas Academy and plug suit Mystic Codes can also be a downside as well. Especially the Atlas Academy MC, which does not have any damage enhancing skills to help on that final wave. The plug suit has a good attack buff on it, so that's okay. It's just that many masters have probably max leveled this Mystic Code already and would prefer to use a Mystic Code that still needs leveling. Others simply prefer to avoid the extra step of having to swap 2 of the support units. Of course, 3-turn Buster farming wasn't completely unheard of before Koyanskaya. If you had an MLB K-scope, or more recently a K-scope and mana loading Append on a Buster Servant with a 50% battery, plus 3 50% charging units like Waver, Scotty, Rhinus, or Castoria, 2 of them your own and 1 borrowed from the friend support, it is possible to clear 3 waves in 3 turns with the use of the plug suit. But now adding Koyanskaya provides what was sorely lacking from a team like that. The much needed boost to Buster performance while being able to be one of those 50% support chargers. Which also highlights that you could get away with relying on a friend support Koyanskaya for those Buster Servants with 50% batteries like Morgan, assuming you have the other requirements. Obviously, having your own contract with this NFF services agent would be more ideal, Not only would being able to use Double Koyanskaya greatly enhance the damage potential, but with certain servants like Morgan, you could eliminate the need to add in a third 50% charging support with the use of the Atlas Academy Mystic Code, which does help to cut down on some steps when clearing a node. Additionally, having your own Koyanskaya also opens up the number of Buster servants you can use for 3-turn farming, no longer really restricted to the servants with 50% batteries. Those with 30% batteries can also work as illustrated earlier. So aside from making Buster farming more viable, what I really like about what Koyanskaya brings to the table is being a reliable Buster crit damage support. There may be times when the NP damage is just not enough, so being able to follow up with enhanced critical damage from a Buster card really helps. And her second skill's Star Bomb is there to supply those stars when needed, though obviously timing its usage would factor in. Then there is one of the key factors to Koyan's kit, the skill cooldown reduction. This can be a useful tool even outside of farming, during those harder, more gimmicky battles. Plus, in a Double Koyanskaya setup, it actually allows those Buster servants with short 1-turn steroid buffs to conceivably use those buffs a couple times in the 3-turn sequence, improving their overall damage output per turn. And ultimately, I just love how she can help ensure critical stars go to the red cards. This is really great for classes with abysmal star weights like Berserkers and Avengers. So if you just want to smash enemies with crits using servants with triple Buster decks, then Koyanskaya will be an amazing support for that. In the end, I definitely think Koyanskaya is a servant to summon for. Not only can she be an incredible support unit that specializes in Buster, but she can also be used as a solid AoE assassin too. Does that mean you should prioritize her over Oberon then? Not necessarily, and I hate to say it, but it can really depend on what your servant roster looks like. If you've built an arts-heavy lineup of servants and possess very few Buster units that have the requisite MP batteries, then Oberon would probably make more sense to target first. However, if most of your servants are Buster, then I think Koyanskaya would be of more immediate benefit to those servants. Oberon does have a slight bias towards Buster units, but there are some drawbacks to it, and Koyan's support buffs have more uptime. Naturally, the most ideal would be to have both Koyanskaya and Oberon, but I realize that might be asking too much. When considering banner availability, Oberon does make more sense to prioritize since Koyanskaya's next banner will be in about 6 months, and Oberon's not for another year and a half. With any luck, there may be a bit of overlap between Koyanskaya's banner and Oberon's during this 6th anniversary. That way, those prioritizing Oberon first could try for Koyanskaya afterwards with any remaining SQ, hopefully being successful in both if the banner schedule ends up like that. Well, those are my thoughts on Koyanskaya and what she brings to the table. It's always my hope that this is helpful to some, or at least enjoyable. If it was either of those, I would really appreciate it if you could hit that like button for Algorithm Sama and consider subscribing for more FGO content. Let me know if you'll be rolling for this sultry Fox Bunny. I definitely will be, and we'll have a video of those as well. I wish everyone the best of luck rolling for Koyanskaya. Thank you all for watching, and until the next one, cheers! Happy FGO 6th anniversary, everyone.